Hello and welcome to Stateline. My name's Chris Kimball. Coming up, we're having a tree change and climbing some mountains. But first, as we approach another summer with record temperatures predicted, thoughts turn to ways of keeping cool. The lakes, rivers and waterholes in and around Canberra have been a feature of summer life. In fact, much of our social history could be found around the water venues. But this year, for those wanting to avoid public pools or a trip to the coast, the options will be limited. The lakes are a dubious biological prospect and many treasured waterholes are now closed to public access. When it comes to a day at the beach, this is as good as we've got. During a long hot summer and too far to drive to the coast, for 50 years Canberrans have been swimming in the region's beautiful rivers and waterholes.
Bit by bit, the access has been withheld, and we're now to a fairly critical stage where access to many of the common waterways and recreation areas and forested areas is increasingly under threat.
Dr Brian Pratt is an ecologist, angler and authority on Canberra's bush waterways.
I've been in the ACT for 44 years. I've enjoyed the best of the ACT. The fish, the lizards, the snakes, the bowerbirds, the kangaroos, the wallabies, the euros. Vegetation is fascinating. Watching fires come through, watching fire recovery. It's been literally a superb nature playground.
Ginninderra Falls is amongst his favourites. One of the region's great natural delights, it's been closed to the public for 5 years and there's no sign of it reopening anytime soon.
Well, it's the only waterfall we've got in the immediate region. The nearest one from here is Gibraltar Falls. This is quite a spectacular set of falls when Ginninderra Creek is running. It was a major tourist attraction and a major source of enjoyment for many people, albeit with some risks involved with very primitive access. But it's a very special area. It's not repeated anywhere. After you move downstream in the Murrumbidgee River, there are no further falls anywhere until it runs way out into the Murray and then beyond into South Australia. So this is the last waterfall in the region for several thousand kilometres.
Stateline spoke to the owner of the land access to the Ginninderra Falls area down here before we came down today. And he said that over many years that the falls was open to the public, they had a lot of problems with mess and major problems with litigation. They were sued over accidents and things like that. In some ways, has the community cost itself these areas by taking legal action, by making a mess of them?
Unfortunately so. Every private landholder along the Murrumbidgee River corridor, for example, has endless stories of people dumping rubbish, breaking fences and gates, stealing furniture, stealing farm gates. That's been a big industry over the years. Shooting livestock, shooting illegally, setting fires. All of this country, for example, has been burnt out by an unattended campfire some years ago. So yeah, the blame is very solidly on that nasty minority that we've got in the community.
Access to many of the region's other public waterholes and swimming areas is also becoming difficult. Canberra pools have also faced closures through algal blooms. Casuarina Sands is closed until next year for upgrades, and sections of the famous Cotter Reserve will be closed for the dam redevelopment.
I understand there's some pretty difficult hooliganism problems at Angle Crossing, Point Hut, Uriara Crossing, and that's unfortunate because it limits the use of those areas by family-type groups.
It's a far cry from the days when this was known as Canberra's main beach.
I mean, the sand used to, it didn't sort of drop away like it does now at the edge here. This is all sorts sand up to the where you see the toilet block there, and just covered in people with beach umbrellas and I don't know about bikinis. I can't remember when the bikini did arrive, but no doubt it was sported here.
Stan Goodhue remembers much about the Cotter. He has a lifetime connection with the region. He first came here as a toddler in the 1930s and spent much of his working life in the area.
It was such an oasis. I mean, on a hot day, the Monica pool would be, full to overflowing, and you could come out here and have a swim. But when I was very young, it was such an attractive place because of all the greenery. It was much more greenth and denser growth than there is at the moment.
How has this place changed since you first remember it from the 1930s?
The main change is that the dam wall has been locked up for quite a long time. It was quite a interesting excursion to go up there and climb up the wall and have a look at the other side. But just it's not as beautiful as it used to be. It's lost a bit of charm there.
Would it be a shame to lose these areas as swimming places for?
Well, it definitely would. I mean, if the whole place was closed, but if you're going to lose it, I mean, what else are you going to do?
So many of the rivers are off limits and the swimming holes are becoming scarce or unattractive. For those seeking a free summer dip, that leaves the lakes. Canberra's ornamental lakes have fascinated many, including author Marion Halligan. Marion, this is our feature ornamental lake, yet how do you think Canberrans regard Lake Burley Griffin? What's the relationship with this place?
I think they mainly look at it, really. They don't. Some people sail on it. Some people would swim in it if they could, but mostly they can't. I think it's mainly a very beautiful thing to look at. I mean, I remember when it wasn't here, and it certainly changed the city psychologically because it fell into two parts rather drastically that had little to do with one another. Putting the lake in kind of made the city a kind of much more integrated whole, which was an interesting thing to have happen, I think, and made it seem much more like a real city than it had been.
A real city where if you don't like public swimming pools, it's tough to stay cool in summer. Can you imagine Canberra where you could run and jump and play in all of these lakes, in all of these? Would it be a different place?
Well, I think it probably would be. There are beaches that have been created round, and it's not that long ago since people played on those beaches and swam, and they had pontoons out and people jumped off, and we used to have kids' birthday parties at Western Park, mainly for my son, because if there's one thing you didn't want was 10 little boys rampaging around your house, and so you took them all out to Western Park, and they could play there, play in the water, play in the tree houses and so on. We should be able to get that back.
Would you throw kids in the water now and let them swim around and paddle around?
No, I wouldn't. I'd have to be pretty sure it was clean.
Yeah, there's a bit of distrust about the lakes.
I think so. I think we're pretty doubtful.
Have we been scared off from lakes?
I think we have, Chris. Partly because of government lack of advice and encouragement in that respect, and partly because the press love printing the horror stories when there's a sewage spill or a bluegreen algal bloom. That becomes the predominant news of the day, and it lingers in people's minds. But for much of the rest of the year, the water quality is quite reasonable.
Have these natural gems, these little hidden areas of Canberra, are they being lost to a generation in some ways?
It was part of the Australian experience, growing up, part of our bush experience. Just a while ago we saw that Physognathus, that water dragon, swim across the creek here right in front of us. It's not particularly concerned about us, it's in its own environment. You can't buy that experience. It's just something that happens in nature. And if you want kids to enjoy that, these are the sorts of places where they've got to go to enjoy it.
It's a